What's up, martial arts fanatics? Welcome back. As always, I am Coach Greg, and today we're doing another Q&A. Before we get started, don't forget, go check out the Nemean fight system available on Dynamic Striking and on Amazon. As for today's question, it was asked, where should I be looking when I'm fighting? And in general, the answer is usually going to be the torso, because remember, the reason that you're looking there is, and it's never like fixated on one thing. It's like driving. Yeah, you look at the road ahead, but you are going to look at the mirrors. You're going to look at cars coming alongside you to make sure you don't get cut off or stuff like that. You know, you're going to poke your vision up to the rear view mirror, make sure nobody's tailgating you. Just kind of being a good defensive driver, right? Same thing. So we're going to look at the torso. I think this is generally pretty common knowledge. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about what situations you might not do that for. But generally speaking, part of the reason that you're going to do it is also because you got to keep in mind, if this guy's actively trying to feint and trying to deceive you, you have to look at the places where you're least likely to be deceived. You don't look at the head or the eyes, because that can really trick people out, right? Doing this kind of stuff. A lot of good feints occur off of that. Same thing with like hips, legs, all this stuff. But it's hard to move your center mass very well without giving away what you're going to be doing. And so it's hard to just kind of like feint a lot with it, if that makes sense. You kind of have to commit a little bit more, but it's never just kind of fixed on one thing. So that's kind of the general answer, but there are some times where I'm not looking at the torso. Some of those are usually because I'm trying to set something up that is very specific. So for example, if I'm trying to set up a counter to the jab, right, I might be trying to lure out the jab, and in the process of using, remember we talked about the monkey see, monkey do principle, where I try to do something and have them repeat it back, because that's how human beings are. We tend to reciprocate very similar to what we receive. So if I start giving them a lot of boxing and I'm trying to get a jab back, at this point, that's when I start looking for the jab so that I can do something like slip and counter, or I can start to parry and counter, whatever my counter is, I'm looking for that specific thing. A good example of that is in featherweights, guys like Max Holloway are really focused on their cross. He'll mostly kind of use peripheral vision, and if he can slip the jab, that's fine, but he's way more concerned about their cross. So he puts a lot more of his emphasis on looking at when that cross comes so that he can be off the line for it. Now, there's some other situations where I might do this. When I shoot for my reactive shot takedowns, that's a time I generally tend to do a lot, because I'm out here working, once again, the monkey see, monkey do principle, luring things out, and as they come in, I'm looking for them to step with their lead foot. So I'm looking for boxing, and I'm looking for a hand strike that's going to come into range. And I'm looking for it as the lead foot comes, so that now I can get my single leg. Another time that I might do it is if I'm using the principle of projected intention to deceive them. Any type of feints where I'm trying to deceive them. Sometimes making eye contact with people is a great way to do it, right? Looking up here, right? People tend to want to make eye contact, right? Unless you're a weirdo like me, in which case I don't. A lot of times though, if I'm here, I might try to look at them in the eye to try to deceive them so that I can set up that good leg kick with that principle of projected intention with all my energy coming upward. Or I might flip the script and look down and come high, right? If people are looking at where my vision is, I'm gonna use that to put it on something that's gonna be used to deceive them. Similar kind of concept occurs when we talk about guys who cold cock somebody. We talked about this in self-defense. You ever see somebody who's like their face and go, boom, right? They're doing that kind of thing. All right. Like they're looking away from you deliberate. That's a deliberate tactic, because they're angry and they're about to swing on you. And they, I think it's just a tactic to make it feel like you're not, like they're not getting ready to hit you, even though they are. They want it to be a surprise. So that kind of brings me to the last thing I want to talk about, which is bowing. And this is kind of related. One of the things that always bugged me is Mr. Miyagi, look eye, always look eye. And the reason that bugs me is, like, I've seen this taught, like, Bruce Lee talks, always look him in the eye. I don't like that, and I'll tell you why I don't like it. I'm not gonna bow to somebody I don't trust in the first place, right? Why am I bowing to this person in the first place? Usually, I'll be honest, I'm usually doing it here. Unless you're a weirdo like Steven Seagal, who goes around bowing to anybody Asian he sees, there's no reason to be bowing all the time unless you are overseas, in which case that's part of the culture. And once again, and maybe it's just my experience, but when I was in Okinawa, it wasn't a thing where, like, oh God, judge you, right? It was just a little nod to show respect. Usually it was just a nod most of the time, and every once in a while I do a little bit of a deeper, but it's to show respect and humility. And so if I'm looking at them, it's kind of a disrespectful statement, so it's kind of contradictory in what you're saying here. And so why are you doing it if you don't respect that person in the first place? And if I'm doing it on the mat, I'm doing it to show humility, right? I'm doing it to show respect, not distrust, and that's a very different thing. That's my personal philosophy towards bowing. So I kind of went on a non sequitur there as far as where you should look, but that's just kind of my thing. That is for sport now. I do want to finish up by talking a little bit about self-defense and where you should be looking. It kind of depends on the situation, right? Everything's circumstantial when you talk about self-defense, but one of the things I try to do is I'm looking at them to see what they're doing, but I'm also kind of using my peripheral to judge surroundings. I might be looking in mirrors if it's in a store to kind of see if there's something behind me. A lot of times if I'm at a gas station late at night, even if I'm not threatened, I tend to turn sideways just because I want to kind of have a better view of everything. I don't like people being behind me. It's a thing for me, right? So I tend to turn myself sideways a little bit when I stand in line. And I try not to be like overt, like I don't trust anybody here. It's just a subtle thing, like, if I'm standing this way in line, I might take my back foot and just kind of lean it a little bit. And I might look around, and I don't have to like look at the guy behind me, but just kind of check around like I'm being social, and also just kind of keep an eye out if somebody looks kind of shady. If somebody is getting threatening at me, of course I'm looking at what they're going to be potentially doing. In that case, I generally tend to look a little bit more at the hands than the torso because I'm looking to make sure they're not reaching for something, okay? I'm not as worried about that person using this heavy feint game in a self-defense situation. What I'm worried about is somebody getting in my face and starting to reach back or start to lift up their shirt to grab something. So I'm going to be a lot more cognizant of their hands in that situation. So that's a situation where it's a little bit different, okay? I hope that answers your question. Thanks for watching, guys.